The student one element is a student of the world as well. So I'll say, thank you so much for speaking first, and after she speaks, I want you to
better than that.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
distance is shorter and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll make a plan.
Okay. No, thanks very much, though. Going, everybody. Good evening to you all. Just letting you know that we will commence in the next 5 minutes. Sorry, we're running a little late. We're just going to go and get everybody outside, inside, and we'll begin within the next 5 minutes. So thank you very much for your patience and really looking forward to the evening's events. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I can see that there's a lot of familiar faces, very happy to see one another. But I'm going to just ask you if you can find a seat. Don't be scared to sit next to somebody, even if you don't necessarily know them. So find a seat, take a seat, and let us proceed with the evening's events. So good evening to everybody. Welcome to you all here for a very, very special event. And thank you all for attending. Just as a matter of housekeeping, the bathrooms, for those of you who don't know, if you just go out the door here, take a left and a long walk down the sort of balcony there, the bathrooms are at the end. So they're in that corner back there. So you go out here, around, and there they are. But that aside, my name is Duncan Park, and I'll coordinate the program for this evening's proceedings as we commemorate the legacy of the astounding life, work, and leadership of Professor Yusuf Karodia. We have some incredible speakers here to share their reflections and insights, but to me, Prof. Karodia's legacy as a leader is one of transformation, upliftment, and most importantly, of impact. The impact of Prof. Karodia's leadership is still felt today. The impact of providing thousands of previously disadvantaged South Africans with accessibility to higher education in a post-apartheid educational vacuum. The impact of fostering Pan-African institutional networks to deepen research advancement and collaboration across the continent. The impact of placing books in the hands of children in a country where our literacy levels are in a state of crisis. The impact on the lives of students, staff, children, and communities across the continent, and what this impact of Prof. Karodia's legacy means today. How do we continue to advance and build upon this remarkable legacy of his leadership to continue to make a positive impact in society and in the lives of ordinary people? So bearing this in mind, let us commence the evening's proceedings. So first, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Magnet Ntombela, the principal of Menkoza, to give the official welcome for this evening's proceedings, after which we will watch a short video prepared for this event. So please join me in welcoming Prof. Ntombela to the podium.
Good evening, or maybe good afternoon, I'm not sure, but greetings. It's a great pleasure to actually stand here and welcome all of you at this, our first leadership lecture in honor of our founder, the much-loved Professor Yusuf Karodia. Many of us remember that pre-COVID, we used to have, at about this time of the year, we used to have the Dr. Chota Mothala Memorial Lecture. We have not abandoned that lecture. I just want to explain that we have taken a decision, the Mankosa leadership in consultation with both families, the Mothala family and the Karodia family, we took a decision that we'll still do both lectures, but they will be done in alternate years. So this year, we're doing the Prof. Karodia lecture, but next year, in 2024, we'll revert back to the Dr. Chota Mothala lecture. It's very important that we honor these two stalwarts. And people who know English better than me said it's not biannual, it's biennial. I hope I'm correct if it happens once every 2 years. So each lecture will be biennial. Yeah, I wish I could actually welcome all of you individually, but because of time, I'll only stick to those I've seen on TV. Actually, I just want to first, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read here and the light is not very bright and I'm in denial about glasses, so please bear with me. I said that yeah, I wish I could actually recognize each one of you, but you are all important. We are glad that you are here. We hope that you're going to have a very fruitful evening, get a chance to reflect on all the things that our program director has mentioned. First of all, I would also like to thank the Karodia family, as well as the Motala family, for just understanding this new change and supporting it, and also by being here. So we are happy to welcome all of you. Our program director will introduce our speakers, so I'm not going to introduce our speakers, but we have a formidable lineup. I'm sure that we will be challenged mentally. We will have a lot to think about. I was told that a good speech is the one that provokes your thinking. If you just clap your hands and say, oh, nice speech, and you forget about it the following day, it's not really fruitful. It doesn't help anybody. I also wish to announce that in your programs, you have Dr. Masha Sokigwa, the DDG of Higher Education, who was supposed to be one of the respondents. Unfortunately, the whole leadership of the Department of Higher Education and Training was summoned to Parliament to answer some questions. I think they were summoned by the Portfolio Committee. But instead, we have Dr. Banim Tembu. If you were Zulu speakers, I would use an expression called umabizwa sabele, a person who you can call at short notice and he responds. So this is what Dr. Banim Tembu has done. He will be introduced accordingly by the program director. I saw very interesting faces here, and I'm looking forward to them participating when we have a question and answer. So please use that opportunity. It will benefit all of us. I'm doing this welcome on behalf of the Mankosa leadership, of the Mankosa executive leadership under the MD, Mr. Goga, and the Chief Academic Officer, Professor Hamid, and also all directors, most of whom are here, and also on behalf of the Mankosa family. I've seen many academics and also some managers in the administrative departments. We are all really happy to have this first, or rather the inaugural lecture in honor of Prof. Karodia. In my view, this auspicious occasion is important in two ways. I'm not saying that in only those two ways, but I just want to mention these two things. Number one of the functions of higher education institutions is to have a porous boundary that allows or gives space to the intellectual interrogation and sharing of ideas with various stakeholders so as to accrue intellectual benefits for all. That is communities, students, and academics. In Professor Badat's recent contribution to the Africa edition of University World News, he quotes Aki Sawyer, who says, "It is, I quote, vital to rehabilitate and preserve the notion and to fight to reclaim the reality of the university as a space of learning, reflection, and debate," close quote. This is a very crucial element of a university. And secondly, we are here to celebrate and learn from a life well lived, a life that is a reminder that when a good song ends, the melody lingers on and continues to give meaning and hope to the lives of many. This is a paraphrased quote from Evan Berlin. And for me, this is what describes the life of Prof. Karodia. His impact, as Duncan said earlier, is going to carry on, and it will live in our DNA for as long as we live. There will be a few testimonies about how Prof. Karodia touched lives and made them better. Anyone who was fortunate enough to interact with Prof has a story to tell, or many stories to tell. I do not think he would have made it as a politician, because he was just transparent and brutally honest, and was always willing to hear the other view. He would often make a profound statement. Whilst you're still thinking about it, he would quickly follow it up with a question like, "Am I right, Magnate?" Just wanting to hear your view as well. So as I said, he really spoke truth to everyone. I'm sure Prof. Hamid can remember stories when we had a deputy minister of education, and he said some statements that we wished we could say, okay, slow down, but because it was truth, he said it. That's why we consider him a great leader. Before I sit down, let me make a somewhat simple comparison. Dr. J.L. Dube, the first ANC president, and his wife, Umam Noctela, founded Ohlange High School in 1901. Many decades later, Mr. S. D. Ngobo, who became the principal of Ohlange, started to revive the legacy of Dr. Dube. He saw it as his mission to keep the legacy of Dr. Dube alive. During the events to celebrate Dr. Dube's legacy, he used the tagline, "Ohlange liyakhuluma," meaning Ohlange speaks. In Tsonga, they have a saying, I may not pronounce it correctly, but it's the meaning that I'm concerned about, which says, "Mintiro ya vulavula," which means works speak. Works speak louder than the words. So similarly, when we honor Prof. Karodia, I'm deliberately quoting Tsonga and all of these things because previously we used to think that people begin to think when they learn the language of the colonialists, but people have always had wisdom, indigenous wisdom. It didn't come with English when we were colonized. So similarly, when we honor Prof. Karodia, we can say, Mankosa speaks, Mankosa Yakuluma, Regent speaks, Honoris United Universities speak, the Million Books Project speak. We can go on and on and on, but because really it is the works that speak about the person. The man has worked and has left us with a better future and fond memories. We thank the family for sharing his life with us. And with those few words, I'm not sure whether the program director agrees with me that it's few words, but with those few words, I'm really happy that you are here. We wish to welcome you to this event, and we're going to be seeing you every year when we have these events. As I said, that we're going to be alternating them. And thank you very much to the speakers who have agreed to share this special day with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ntombela, and thank you to the team who put together that video to provide just a short snapshot into the impact of the work of Professor Karodia. And indeed, he impacted a great many lives, and not least of which was the impact he had on the lives of people with whom he worked. And in recognition of this, we will now hear directly from a staff member who worked very closely with Professor Karodia, Mancosa Director and Catalyst for Quality and Innovation, Roxanne Bosch. Please join me.
As we gather to honor the legacy of a remarkable individual, Professor Yusuf Karodia, fondly known as Prof, Uncle Yusuf, YK, and the Bali, I have been reminded of the profound lessons that he has imparted, lessons that transcend the boundaries of our everyday lives and reach into the very heart of wisdom and leadership. Today, and at an opportune time of the year, it is a privilege to reflect and share some learnings with you that have shaped the enduring YK leadership legacy. Lesson number 1, dress to impress and progress. Prof. Karodia's philosophy extended beyond mere clothing. It was about carrying oneself with dignity and respect, and there was not a position nor a job role that he did not believe deserved the sense of purpose. He always kept a few backup outfits at the office, not for himself, but for the man that walks in and needed the boost of confidence and security for whatever they were about to set out and achieve for that day. The takeaway: dress for the job that you want, not for the one that you have. Lesson number 2, master the global stage. Prof approached international travel not as a privilege, but as a fine art. He taught us that traveling isn't just about crossing borders. It's about crossing boundaries and understanding and empathy. Every trip was a lesson in diplomacy, patience, developing our capabilities to discern and judge character and culture, and admittedly, there was a great level of operating to acquire some of the perks of international travel. The takeaway: experience leads and education follows. Lesson number 3, power in knowledge, brilliance in application. Prof. Karodia wasn't just a reservoir of information. He had an uncanny ability to go deeper than face value and use knowledge to triangulate and extract even more information, not from books, but from people. It is what made him an excellent judge of character, elevated his ability to influence, and it put him in a position to deploy strategies that hit the intended target with accuracy. The takeaway: knowledge is your arsenal, but using it wisely, that's your superpower. Lesson number 4, breaking of bread. For Prof, sharing a meal was more than a social activity. It was a bonding activity, and it is what nurtured relationships over many, many years. Shared meals translated to shared stories, and shared stories translated to shared growth. These platforms also served as a chance to make amends and forgive, a quality many appreciated about Prof, and often admired because he knew the importance of being the bigger person. The takeaway: shared meals shape culture. Lesson number 5, books teach, people transform. Prof. Karodia was an astute observer and listener, and he often shared insights that reflected a deep understanding of the complexities of the human spirit. This ability was particularly evident in his travels and during challenging meetings, where his keen observations often led to breakthroughs and resolutions. At times, it even became a game in which those around him prompted him to give his perceptions and insights, and would then go about testing the accuracy through discrete activities and conversations. The results always left us speechless and smiling at his very distinctive talent. The takeaway: studying books makes you smart, studying people makes you wise. Lesson number 6, time is the ultimate treasure. Prof. Karodia valued time and considered it the most precious commodity. He taught us to use it wisely, efficiently, and always with a purpose. He started his days early, took time to think and put pen to paper, and he was a master at using marginal minutes in time to shape thoughts and give guidance to those around him. He equally used those marginal minutes to make sure that he maintained good balance amongst the demands of the day. Sometimes he would just walk around and say hi. Other times he would go for a quick back massage or go to the gym. Most importantly, giving of his time was his best quality, and there was never a person who was turned away from interacting and engaging with him. The takeaway: invest your time wisely, for it is irreplaceable. Lesson number 7, tackle the toughest first. Prof. Karodia believed in facing challenges head-on. The worst tasks, in his eyes, were often the most crucial, needing immediate and focused attention. This philosophy fostered resilience and a no-nonsense approach to problem solving. He called a spade and gave his feelings and thoughts on every matter. It is what made him more than a transparent leader. It's what made him authentic. The takeaway: the hardest tasks often hold the key to the breakthroughs. Lesson number 8, give generously, give sincerely. Give with a generous heart and pure motives. This principle guided Prof's philanthropy and personal interactions. He gave selflessly, not seeking recognition, but out of genuine concern and empathy for others. And quite frankly, he was always incredibly excited at the opportunity to do so. The takeaway: pure intentions lead to pure impact. Lesson number 9, commanding respect, inspiring action. Prof. Karodia embodied a unique blend of authority and presence that was both commanding and inspiring. His presence in any meeting or event was palpable. His authority was never about power over others, but about empowering everyone around him. And he demonstrated that presence isn't about dominating a room. It's about engaging with it and about making each person feel and seen and heard. The takeaway: lead not with your role, but with your character. The last of the lessons, lesson number 10, is leadership is humility in action. Prof's humility was evident in his respect for everyone, regardless of their status. He understood that true leadership is rooted in humility, service, and sacrifice. No person and no task was too insignificant to add value. The takeaway: the higher the rank, the lower you bow. In conclusion, and as we reflect on these lessons, let us remember that this tribute is to honor the man, but it's to glorify God Almighty. First, for granting us the privilege of having known Professor Yusuf Karodia, and second, in gratitude that Prof was a man of valor, one who was obedient to his call and his life purpose, and something that has given direction to many of us here. As we celebrate his legacy tonight, let us embrace it as our own, for his testimony is our testimony. His legacy is our legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that, Roxy. I think a moving tribute that resonates deeply with many of us and with some very, very valuable teachings. We'll now watch a video tribute sent from a student, Mrs. Adeline Singh. So I'll just ask, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adeline Singh. I'm a former MBA student of Menkoza and also a proud recipient of the 2023 Professor Yusuf Karodia Awards. It is an honor for me to pay tribute to Professor Karodia, who continues to inspire and be that thought leader and visionary in many leaders' lives today. Professor Karodia's legacy and his life's work was around promoting peace, unity, and strong family values. Today, I stand before you as a proud product of the legacy of Professor Karodia, which continues to inspire and influence. Having met Professor Karodia during my most challenging years of my career, I can truly say that what Professor Karodia has taught me and the lessons of life, I would not be where I am today. Professor Karodia's wisdom shared gave me an opportunity to search for purpose in life, where I established a non-profit organization called Stint in 2021, a community-based organization that has reached out to more than 3,500 people across South Africa. More recently, the influence and the legacy of Professor Karodia continues to push all boundaries in my life, where I opened an organization called the Skills Compliance Institute, looking at the trajectory of skills development within small businesses in the country. Professor Karodia continues to inspire me in my life with key leadership lessons of personal growth and building one another for a better life of tomorrow. So I would love for people to join me in doing things the Professor Yusuf Karodia way. It is the only way to the future, and I thank the family for allowing us the opportunity to continue this legacy in his name. Thank you.
We now move on to the crux of this evening's proceedings, the Professor Yusuf Karodia Memorial Lecture. I'm honored to introduce the main speaker delivering this evening's lecture, as well as the two respondents, who I will ask to join me on stage once I have introduced them. So firstly, our main speaker this evening is Professor Salim Badat. Salim Badat is a research professor in the history department at the University of the Free State, a first-generation university student who was born on the Berea and grew up in Asherville. An intended career in the academy had to be postponed during the 1980s because of apartheid. Instead, Salim became a national student leader and then coordinator of the grassroots community newspaper in Cape Town, which was a key element of resistance politics on the Cape Flats. He joined the underground of the liberation movement and was involved in the creation of the United Democratic Front. After periods in political detention, he was banned, restricted to his home, and forbidden to set foot in educational institutions. Salim began his academic career at the University of the Western Cape, becoming the director of its education policy unit. In 1999, he was appointed the first CEO of the Council on Higher Education, the advisory body to the Minister of Higher Education and Training. He served under Minister Kadar Asmal and Naledi Pandor. In 2006, he became Vice-Chancellor of Rhodes University, the first black person to do so in 102 years. In 2014, he was headhunted by the Andrew Mellon Foundation of New York to become its first program director of international higher education and strategic projects. He directed the $8 billion philanthropic foundation's grant-making to universities in Africa and the Middle East and to the global programs. Salim holds qualifications from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and Boston University and a PhD in sociology from the University of York. He is the author of 4 books, Tennis, Apartheid, and Social Justice, published earlier this year, The Forgotten People, Political Banishment Under Apartheid, Black Man, You Are On Your Own, and Black Student Politics, Higher Education and Apartheid. He is the author of some 60 book chapters, journal articles, and research reports, and of over 40 magazine and media opinion pieces. Prof. Badat's awards include honorary doctorates from the universities of the Free State, York, and Rhodes, and the Inyatelo Exceptional Philanthropy Award. Earlier this year, the Human Sciences Research Council and University South Africa awarded him a prize for research excellence in social justice scholarship. A remarkable CV, if I may say so. Following from Prof. Badat, the first respondent shall be Dr. Barney Mthembu. As Professor Ntombela mentioned, I know the program indicates Dr. Marsha Sokikwa, but unfortunately an urgent matter came up, and very fortunately, Dr. Mthembu agreed to participate on extremely short notice. Dr. Mthembu holds a junior secondary diploma from Adams College of Education, a Bachelor of Arts in Geography and Pedagogics from the University of Zululand, ABA Honours Degree in Geography from the University of Zululand, a Master of Business Administration from Mankosa, and a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Zululand, where his thesis was on the topic Rural Tourism as a Viable Formula for Alleviation of Poverty, the case of Bergville. Dr. Mthembu has successfully published 3 papers in international journals. He has worked as a teacher at Umlazi Secondary School, worked as a senior lecturer at Mbumbulu College of Education, employed as chief examiner in the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Education, worked as a curriculum coordinator for the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Education, as a chief education specialist at the Department of Education responsible for institutional development. He also worked as director in the Provincial Examinations and Assessments Chief Directorate, as well as Chief Director. He was appointed as Deputy Director General for Curriculum Management and Delivery in KwaZulu-Natal, appointed by Premier Zikalala as Acting Head of Department in KwaZulu-Natal's Department of Education. He is currently serving as Acting Deputy Director General in the National Department of Education. Following Dr. Mthembu, the second and final respondent will be Prof. Shireen Motala. Prof. Motala was awarded the Saatchi Chair for Teaching and Learning in July 2020 at a Tier 1 level, with its inception in October 2020. Prof. Motala was previously the head of the postgraduate school at the University of Johannesburg until September 2020 and is a professor in the Faculty of Education at UJ. The Saatchi Teaching and Learning Unit is located in the Faculty of Education. She is a member of the Academy of Science in South Africa, or ASAF. Prior to joining UJ in 2010, Prof. Motala was the director of the Education Policy Unit at the University of Witwatersrand. Her academic qualifications include a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Durban-Westville, a Bachelor of Social Science Honours from the University of Cape Town, an MA from the University of Warwick, a PGCE from the University of London, and a PhD from the University of the Witwatersrand. In March 2010, she was appointed as the director of the newly established Postgraduate Center in Research and Innovation at the University of Johannesburg. In May 2016, she was appointed as the senior director of the postgraduate school, joining the executive leadership group at UJ. She has held numerous leadership roles related to higher education, including chairperson of the Education Policy Consortium from 2006 to 2010, chairperson of the UNESCO South African Commission from 2001 to 2006, and was appointed as the first inaugural president of the South African Research Association from 2013 to 2014. She was appointed by the Minister of Higher Education and Training to serve on the Council of Higher Education for 2 terms from 2010 to 2018. In 2013, she served on the Ministerial Committee to review the National Senior Certificate Examination. She is currently a trustee at the South African Institute for Distance Learning and is part of the Assessment and Accreditation Committee at Umalusi. As an NRF-rated researcher, she has initiated collaborations between universities across Africa, Asia, and Europe, and this has led to the formation of long-term regional and international partnerships. Promoting scholarship and a sound intellectual culture and developing the next generation of scholars to contribute to societal transformation have been at the forefront of her activities and will continue to be during her tenure as chair. And with that, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome our three speakers to the stage and to welcome, firstly, Professor Salim Badat to give the memorial lecture. Please join me in welcoming them.
The leadership of Mancosa, colleagues, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow panelists. It's a great honor to deliver the inaugural Professor Yusuf Karodia Leadership Legacy Lecture. And I thank you for the generous opportunity. I address your topic of honoring a legacy in the era of leadership bankruptcy in 5 steps. First, I recognize the exceptional achievements of Yusuf Karodia. Second, I argue that we have a deep crisis of governance in South Africa and point to some of its manifestations. Thereafter, I draw on Rul Khoza's observation that we have a strange breed of leaders and exemplify the pervasive and serious failings of many of them. I then reflect on the powerful idea of a better life for all and ask whether we are still on track or has this become an impossible dream in South Africa. Finally, I comment on leadership and our challenges and tasks in that regard. Professor Yusuf Muhammad Karodia created and bequeathed an impressive higher education legacy, recognized by him being awarded twice the African Leadership Person of the Year Award for education and development. He was, however, not born with the proverbial golden spoon in his mouth. Yusuf's origins were extremely modest. Being one of 5 children who grew up in the 1950s in a small flat in May Street in the Greyville area of Durban. From a young age, Yusuf held various jobs to augment the family income. At the racecourse, with a local grocer, and as a shop assistant.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adeline Singh. I'm a former MBA student of Mancosa and also a proud
Later, this early commitment to helping his family extended to his wider family. Yusuf was born into a Muslim family whose friends and associates spanned the traditional social and religious divides. This network was created and cultivated by his mother, who had progressive ideas about social life and social relationships. His mum routinely played a good bridge hand with her friends. It is regrettable today that too many Muslims are terribly insular and have no meaningful relations with people who are not Muslim. This, in my view, does not facilitate the kind of leadership we require in South Africa. Despite their modest means, the Karodia family home was an open house to friends and family. Visitors included struggle stalwarts like Natu Babenya and the late Ibrahim Ismail Ibrahim, Natal Indian Congress members, and other Congress leaders who used their home for clandestine meetings. In the early 60s, Yusuf's older brothers, Ahmed and Iqbal, were detained when Ibrahim and Babenya were arrested for terrorism and imprisoned on Robben Island. The young Yusuf delivered food for his brothers to the prison. These experiences undoubtedly had a formative influence on Yusuf's life. Yusuf was sent by an aunt to study for his matric in Ladysmith. Under apartheid, most professional occupations were reserved for whites. Teaching was one of the few professions open to black people. And so Yusuf enrolled at the Durban College for Indians on Salisbury Island for a teacher's diploma and qualified as a teacher in 1972. He then married Zuleika Goga Karodia, a supportive, unassuming, and modest lifelong partner. To support themselves, he worked as a school teacher for 3 years and then got a heavy-duty driver's license and worked as a trucker, rising to become a personnel and training officer. Yusuf returned to teaching in 1978 for 10 years, becoming head of department. He did voluntary work at township schools and for Pambili schools, established by the late Professor Fatima Mir, to whom he was related maternally. Yusuf continued to study. Between 1980 and 1987, he completed a bachelor's degree in education, another degree in the arts, and a master's in education. In 1992, he was awarded a PhD in education by the University of Pretoria. Between 1988 and 1990, he won a scholarship from the British Council to Manchester University. Fulbright and Educational Opportunities Council faculty fellowships at the University of Illinois in Chicago followed, the latter for doctoral research on management issues related to non-governmental organizations. From 1995, he built Mancosa and served as its principal. And you will agree it takes intellect, entrepreneurship, determination, great effort, and courage to build that institution and leave a legacy like Mancosa. He subsequently extended his pioneering spirit to create the foundation that today bears his name. It exemplifies his wonderful material generosity. And it must be hoped that others with the means follow his exemplary leadership instead of wasting their monies on Maseratis and Porsches and things like that. In 2019, returning after 38 years to live again in Durban, I was taken with his vision to develop the precinct that housed Mancosa and Regent and the surrounding areas. Sadly, he considered eThekwini municipality to be the main impediment of his vision. Having lived the previous 5 years in New York, I mentioned its policy of new buildings having to be for mixed income groups and not only for the wealthy. Yusuf liked the idea, demonstrating his egalitarian spirit. Learning that I was transiting from my New York post to one at UKZN, he generously offered me space and support for my research. Beyond my gaze, a delicious lunch materialized. And I didn't go home empty-handed either. Thrust into my hands were books by Dalrymple on India and Ghulam Vahid's splendid biography of Chota Motala, an object lesson in the craft of writing outstanding biography. I implored Yusuf to set modesty aside and to commission a biography on himself, undertaken by an accomplished scholar and encompassing his personal biography and his life as a scholar and as an entrepreneur, it could be tremendously inspiring, given our dire lack of exemplary leaders. Used imaginatively, it could be an important resource for leadership and management education programs, both at Mancosa and elsewhere, and for addressing issues like values, governance, management, leadership, planning, and financing. Some could wish to portray Professor Karodia as a rag to riches saga. To reduce him to that would be, I think, to obscure his striking achievements. I now turn to the governance and leadership crisis that grips South Africa. Under a proud liberation movement that post-1994 that has abandoned its principles, displayed remarkable ineptitude, been mired in corruption, and has undergone morbid deformities. I come from that movement, so I speak painfully about it. The political theorist Antonio Gramsci speaks of an organic crisis to denote the existence of incurable structural contradictions in society that are ideological, that are political, that are social, and that are economic. An organic crisis is a crisis in political representation by political parties, a crisis of authority, and ultimately a crisis of hegemony or the general crisis of the state. Look around. An organic crisis is usually resolved either through formative action by the ruling class or by social revolution from below. Purely defensive initiatives cannot safeguard the hegemony of the ruling class. In this case, the economic and political elites centered around the ANC. South Africa is in the throes of an organic crisis that requires formative action. That is, significant economic, political, and ideological restructuring and change. There is no sign of this formative action. That requires, in the words of the late Jill Marcus, who was governor of our Reserve Bank, a coordinated and coherent range of policy responses, a plan of action rather than just talk, and strong and focused leadership from the top. One that restores confidence, credibility, and trust in our leaders and in our institutions. Instead, the ruling party conflates itself with the state. Many of its leaders imagine that the state is their piggy bank and that key institutions are employment bureaus for cadres. The ANC is mired in short-term factional battles, survival electioneering, and seemingly incapable of uprooting pervasive corruption and decisively addressing our serious economic and social challenges, which we see all around us. It is in this context that Roel Khoza of Nedbank commented on the emergence of a strange breed of leaders whose moral quotient is degenerating. He questioned whether we have an accountable democracy and insisted that we have a duty to call to book leaders who cannot lead. Regrettably, too many people who occupy positions of economic, political, and administrative power and who are entrusted by us to lead society and to lead key institutions are sorely wanting in the core values and conduct associated with ethical, responsible, effective, and accountable leadership, the kind of leadership Yusuf displayed. Witness the flagrant abuse of power for political, economic, and private gain and self-enrichment, as manifested in corruption, fraud, dubious tenderpreneurial activities, and the perpetuation of macho masculinities and women's oppression in the name of culture. Observe the failures of those entrusted with leading critical economic, social, educational, and health institutions to grasp their constitutional, moral, and social responsibilities in a society whose goals are meant to be human dignity, social equity, and justice. Recall that we are promised an innovative public service that will provide an excellent quality of service, be the servant of the people, and be accessible, transparent, accountable, efficient, and free of corruption. And then think of the Department of Home Affairs. Bato Pele, people first, was to be the watchword of the public service. Instead, there is a widespread culture of disdainful conduct and service, sheer indifference to the needs of people, and a sore lack of ethical and accountable leadership. While the elites of our country, and many of us sitting here, have recourse to private and Model C schools, private hospitals, and private cars, our impoverished depend on public services for their basic needs and to improve their lives and the lives of their children. These shortcomings in critical public services undermine the dignity of the impoverished, retard the social and educational development of children and youth, thwart the realization of legally enshrined social goals, and violate human and social rights. Indisputably, a great challenge is to improve the quality of education in schools. A key distinguishing feature between well-performing and poorly performing schools is effective leadership. Our schools cry out for such educational leadership of the kind Yusuf demonstrated at Mankosa. Carolyn Southey writes in Help, the Cops Are Coming, that a depressing realization is sitting in that we're in danger, not only from those in civilian clothes. There's an increasing trend for our criminals to sport police uniforms. For her, the increase in crimes involving the police is symptomatic of a police force that is sans leadership, devoid of a moral compass, and feels accountable to no one. Our fragile environment, too, suffers because of self-serving or timid leadership. We pursue relentlessly and without effective regulation so-called progress and development, despite the massive damage to the land, to the rivers, to the seas, and despite global climate change. The shenanigans of our business persons, politicians, and state officials make for riveting, if depressing, reading. The brazen sense of entitlement, the glib emphasis on the legal rather than on the ethical, and the impunity with which so-called leaders redeploy resources for private benefit and get away with it. Perhaps we have been numbed into silence. Perhaps we assume that our duties as citizens extend no further than voting every 5 years. Perhaps shocked and awed, or just thoroughly discouraged, we cannot imagine how we as citizens can contribute to change. Silence, ladies and gentlemen, is not an option. It opens the door to irresponsible and unaccountable leadership, and a culture of impunity, to crass greed and narcissistic materialism, and to the gods of self-interest and material wealth. Our realities, I appreciate, can demoralize us, make us despair, make us become cynical about this country that we all love and about the prospect for change. But I want to argue we must not unduly despair or become cynical. Nelson Mandela writes that there were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested. But I could not give myself up to despair. That way lays defeat and death. Instead, we must remain optimistic. And in Mandela's words, keep our heads pointed towards the sun, our feet moving forward. We must live our lives ethically, virtuously, and with empathy, embodying the change we want to see in this country. I will remind us that we displayed great ingenuity and courage to rid ourselves of tyranny and to win our democracy. Freed from apartheid repression, we had the unequal opportunity and freedom to reimagine and reshape our future, to forge new ways of conducting our affairs, and to build new identities that transcend these divides on religious and so-called race lines and so on. We had the historic possibility, rare in human affairs, to give birth to a genuinely new society in harmony with our constitutional ideals. Through a democratic constitution, we proclaimed our own commitment to human dignity, to achieving equality, and to advancing non-sexism and non-racialism, and the human rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our Bill of Rights. The liberation movement, to which some of us belonged, to which many gave their lives, and in which millions of people vested their hopes, promised a better life for all in 1994. From the great optimism of 1994 to our grave current predicaments is just a short 30 years. The poet and playwright Bertolt Brecht wrote of the struggle of the mountains and the battle of the plains. If the constitutional democracy is akin to the mountains, it has been largely, though not irreversibly, won. The battle of the plains for an equitable and humane society remains to be won in this country. This is the arduous task of ensuring that we have environmentally sustainable economic development, that we create decent jobs, that we eliminate unemployment and poverty, that we provide effective education, health, and other social services, and that we enhance social equity and extend and deepen our democracy. We should settle for nothing less. Already a perversely and most unequal society on earth in 1994. Since then, income inequality has increased in South Africa, in general and within so-called racial groups. The percentage of income of the poorest 20% of our society has fallen since 1994. Conversely, the percentage of income of the richest 20% of our society has increased. The poorest 20% in our society earn 1.7% of all income. The poorest 20% earn 1.7% of all income. The richest 20% take home 72.5%. this is under 30 years of democracy. Without some 43% of our fellow citizens live on a few thousand rands annually. Without social grants, which people moan about, without those social grants, death through hunger and starvation would join HIV/AIDS as a leading cause of mortality in this country. The old divides of race, class, gender, geography remain all too evident. Look around us. Hunger and disease, poverty and unemployment continue to blight our democracy. Impunity and morbid ills, such as gender violence and abuse of children, destroy innumerable lives and wreak havoc in our country. Undoubtedly, there have been positive developments and social gains since 1994. Strong voices and institutions defend and promote constitutional ideals. If battered, our institutions of democracy and justice and our media remain intact. On the final page of The Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela writes that to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedoms of others. He observes that I have walked the long road to freedom, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are more hills to climb. The truth is that in 2023, we may be citizens, but our citizenship remains to be fully developed. We are yet to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of other people. Our devotion to freedom, freedom from want, to a life of dignity, remains to be seen, as our devotion to an inclusive citizenship. The idea that with freedom comes responsibilities, the responsibility to advance the public good, appears to be lost on too many people in leadership positions in our society. The long walk to full citizenship rights in a just, non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic society has not yet ended. Finally, to turn to leadership, I am doubtful that leadership can be simply taught, or that training in theory or skills is enough, or that there are off-the-shelf perfect leadership models, whether the Harvard Business School or the Gordon Institute or Mancosa. Building leadership means taking context, history, and culture seriously. We are not Western Europe, we are South Africa. We need a situated leadership that is appropriate to our place and our conditions. And we need to forge leadership that is collective and institutionally distributed, rather than centered on a few well-paid, big men, or as is often the case now, big women. In leading, in some contexts and positions, it is undoubtedly helpful to be educated and to possess the knowledge, expertise, and skills that an advanced degree may give you. But in general, advanced education is not necessary for leadership. Antonio Gramsci, who I quoted about the organic crisis, observes that not all people play the role of intellectuals in our society. We know that. But he reminds us that all people are intellectuals. Everyone. All can think, can analyze, can synthesize, can plan, can calculate, and so on. If all people are intellectuals, everyone is capable of exercising leadership. Leadership then is not about qualifications. It's about values. It's about character. It's about capabilities. The kind of character and values that Yusuf Karodia demonstrated. Everyone has the potential to be a leader. For leaders are not born with some magic, infallible toolkit. They are produced by environments, they're produced by opportunities, they're produced by journeys and life experiences. Leadership cannot be inherited or bestowed by patronage, as we see. It's not derived from material wealth or high office or because you have a degree or you have the status of a vice chancellor or a president. It is earned. Leadership is earned through ethical conduct, through integrity, through visionary endeavor, through selfless public service, through perseverance, and above all, commitment to people and responsibilities, not to the gods of profit and material wealth. Given our challenges, our task is to cultivate through our institutions, like Mancosa and others, our task is to cultivate, develop, and institutionalize ethical, responsible, and accountable leadership across our society. Professor Paul Malam's book, Enlightened Rule, Portraits of 6 Exceptional 20th Century Leaders, teaches us that outstanding leaders hold on to some key fundamental values. They believe in the innate worth and dignity of all human beings, whether you're a worker, whether you're a woman, whether you're a farm peasant. Everyone should have dignity. Everyone deserves dignity. And that leaders are responsible for creating the conditions in which we can all realize our talents and our potential. Leaders have an unwavering commitment to democracy and human rights, including popular participation of people, proper access to education, to healthcare, to personal security, and social and economic justice. Leaders have a generosity of spirit. They have an egalitarian spirit and a sense of obligation to advance everyone. Leaders take learning, intellectual endeavor, education, and knowledge seriously. They don't tell us we are just clever intellectuals. They know that knowledge and education are vital for understanding our world, for gaining insight into our problems and challenges, and for creating a hospitable world. Leaders have an unwavering commitment to non-racialism, rather than ethnic nationalism or chauvinism, to non-sexism, and they respect difference and diversity, whatever differences may exist amongst us, whether they are linguistic, cultural, and so on. And they respect people on the base, irrespective of the basis of race, gender, nationality, sexual orientation, or language and culture. At the heart of leadership, ladies and gentlemen, is integrity and honesty. Ethical leaders, in the words of the great African patriot Amilcar Cabral, tell no lies. They expose lies wherever they are told. They mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. They claim no easy victories. They embody and live the core values associated with leadership. Without integrity, there can be no principled conduct, no prospect of winning the trust of people, no prospect of inspiring and uniting people around a common vision, no effective communication, and no ethical and responsible leadership. Leaders look beyond themselves. They see potential all around them. They strive to build new generations of leaders who will surpass them and create opportunities for people to develop themselves. Sounds like Yusuf Karodia. The leader is best when people are hardly aware of her or his existence. When her or his work is done, her or his aim is fulfilled, the people say, we did it ourselves. So wrote the ancient Chinese Taoist philosopher Lao Tzu. Of course, leaders need committed but critical supporters who are also actors of change. Leadership then becomes everyone's task and responsibility. Is that not the real meaning of the slogan, power to the people? That everyone functions as leaders. In closing, like all good leaders, Professor Yusuf Karodia possessed a generosity of spirit, an egalitarian spirit, and a sense of obligation to further the common good. He took education and knowledge seriously, deeply appreciating those for the promise that they can hold, as first-generation students tend to do, because we know the importance of education if we are first-generation students. His triumphs could not have been easy victories. Undoubtedly, he had many hills to climb, stare down, and overcome many difficulties, mistakes, and maybe failures. He persevered purposefully and innovatively, and his bequests all around us are impressive and enduring legacies. When the staff member paid the tribute to Professor Karodia, she made two observations: his love for knowledge, and that he also had empathy. And that reminds me about Rabindranath Tagore's dictum: knowledge may make you powerful, but empathy is what makes you human. Considering our conditions, considering the horrendous genocide of Palestinians in Gaza by apartheid Israel, aided by hypocritical and imperialist Western powers that value some lives more than others, there is much to be angry about today. An old Sotho proverb says, no matter how hot your anger may be, it cannot cook. Our challenge is to make the real fires that cook. In this, we can draw inspiration from outstanding leaders who have provided selfless leadership and paved our path to democracy. Luthuli, Mandela, Lillian Ngoyi, Chris Hani, Ahmad Kathrada, Ruth First, Reggie September, Bram Fisher, Amina Kachalia, and many others. From them, we can learn good values, and we can practice being down-to-earth people, fallible people. Like them, we can be mindful of other people's troubles and aspirations rather than just our own. And we can have the courage to challenge wrong wherever we see it and to achieve change. Like them, we can embrace an ethic of service and perseverance to overcome obstacles and appreciate that leading means doing what is right rather than what is convenient or popular amongst followers, even if sometimes these decisions come at great personal cost. We must take inspiration too from and support the youth of our country, who dedicate imagination, effort, and time to promote social justice, deepen our democracy, and protect our planet. I end by saying, power is in us. Every one of us, in the places that we work, in the places that we live, in the places that we socialize, all of us can through our example and through our action, make our country a more equal, just, and hospitable society. We must be the change that we would like to see in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Prof. Badat. At this point, I will welcome Dr. Mthembu to the podium. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Program Director. You have just reminded me of the 10 minutes clause, and I will just try and ensure that I don't go beyond that. But when you respond to a speaker, it's either you agree or you disagree, or you agree or you dispute. So most of the things that the Prof has said about Prof Karodia, I agree totally. However, I think the emphasis on leadership became an understatement in a way it is put, because in my view, he was a person whose leadership was beyond imagination. It might happen that it can take us ages to get another leader who is patriotic, who has empathy, a person who does not look at people in terms of color, but look at people in terms of what the country needs. Therefore, I think it's bigger than what the Prof has said. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a human natural instinct to remember the ones who have left us. It comes in two ways. Some people are remembered favorably, and some people are remembered unfavorably. I just wanted to declare here that you will agree with me that Prof Karodia deserves to be remembered favorably because he was an outstanding education leader who went out on his way to provide a platform for transformation in our country for better societies. Prof Yusuf, as you have said, clearly demonstrated that leadership is the art of accomplishing things that benefit the society, not the art of accomplishing what you need and what you deserve and what you desire. Looking at Prof Karodia's successes and contributions and looking at where Mankosa is today, I tend to agree with Julius Nyerere, who said, open quotations, you are not successful until your successors succeed. If you look at Mankosa today, you can see that a leader of Prof Karodia's caliber has actually produced successors who are successful. Therefore, I do agree and also support the point that the kind of leadership that he demonstrated is a rare kind of leadership. And it is very, very important for us to know that we need to emulate that. Also, in the transformational agenda, a leader who does not lead by example is not a leader, it's a dictator. That's why I'm standing here to appreciate also the kind of a leader that Professor Karodia was, because he was hands-on in everything. When people work, he was working. When people think, he was thinking. And when people came with innovation, he was part of innovation, which is very good. We must therefore learn from Professor Karodia that leaders in education must lead by example. He did not only communicate his expectations about Mankosa, but he was part of the vision, he was part of the dream, he was part of the imagination, he was part of the focus. It is very important also to agree with Prof that the kind of a leader which Prof Karodia was is a cut above the rest, and also you have few of such species in the country and all over the world. I was from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Natal, when I came here. I told my story because I wanted to write a thesis on environmental ethics amongst the black township people. And I told Professor Preston White that my starting point is the Land Act of 1913. He kicked me out. That's why I ended up in MPA. You see, because he said you cannot touch the Land Act of 1913. My premise was that black township people cannot have strong environmental ethics because they were dispossessed of land. Then I decided to look around and I found Mankosa to do the MPA. It is also important, as we remember, Prof. Karodia, that the successful leaders in education are those who go an extra mile. I saw a mobile library for the first time here in this building, shown by Professor Karodia. Now, the issue of reading is a topical issue these days because we want to create a reading nation. Now, his vision of a reading nation is a very important contribution that he has made because readers are leaders. Those who cannot read should not be allowed to lead. That's why he was trying to create leaders through that. Maybe also to mention that Prof. Karodia was selfless. He was a pure natural creature. Because if you are selfless, you don't do things for yourself, but you do things to advance the agenda of societal transformation. Therefore, if we look at nature itself, we learn that nature and Prof. Karodia cannot be dissociated. Remember, rivers don't drink their own waters, but they flow to sustain the intricate balances for survival of people and animals. Trees don't eat their fruits and vegetables, but they they grow to sustain food security for a diversified kind of creatures in the world. The sun does not shine in itself. It shines for you and me. Therefore, we need to actually understand also that as it shines, it makes lives possible for all of us. That is the type of a person Karodia was. He was not shining to himself. He was not drinking his own water as a river of education. And therefore, it's important that we learn selflessness. As humans, we are born to help others. Life is good when you are transformed, but it's better than good when you transform others. I may say, Prof, as you talk about South Africa and the problems of the ruling party and other things, we must know that we don't have a freedom. You will never, ever have freedom when your oppressor calls you for a negotiation, when your oppression was not negotiated. That person did not negotiate our oppression with us. But when it comes to freedom, that person wants to negotiate the freedom with us. That's why I argue, and argue strongly, that we do not have a freedom, we have an arrangement by the colonialist, by the oppressor, to say, come to the table. That's why the land issue is still standing. That's why poverty is still there. However, Prof, I do argue that leaders we have must take responsibility for integrity, honesty, commitment, and dedication for the benefit of people. But the base is an arrangement by the colonialists. The last thing I want to say is that my argument with Prof. Karodia all the time was about what rules are we using to play the game? You cannot adjudicate a rugby game using soccer rules. As long as we use Western cultures and values to determine what we need in Africa, we won't go forward because Western values are not designed for us. Rather go to the East, like Prof. Karodia. He would go to the India, come back with books, give it to anyone who wants to read, you see. And if you look at Mankosa, Mankosa was not like this. It started in Overport, a small entity. Today, it is a gigantic entity which actually provides higher education for so many people across the continents. Why? It is because he believed in the philosophy of Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese philosophy which talks about continuous improvement. What I want to say, therefore, is that we are here about a leader. We are here about a person who was patriotic. We are here about a person who would have actually contributed more to make our country better if he was still around. And Prof, in many areas I agree with you, but I want to say that another mistake that we made in South Africa, when you go out to fight for liberation, you are a soldier. When you come back to the country, you need to be given the rightful position. Because when you are fighting for freedom, you are carrying a gun. But there is disease, you can't shoot disease. There is poverty, you can't shoot poverty. There are all these kinds of problems that you have. That's why I'm saying, therefore, to be a freedom fighter does not necessarily make you a leader. We made a mistake and say, because you fought for freedom, you can be a president. Because you fought for freedom, you can be a minister. In which case, then, that was a problem. Therefore, my salute to Prof. Karodia, as I end, is that if God borrowed us, people like Karodia, for a longer time, at least we would have all these problems that we have in the country being solved or moved towards a solution. With the 10 minutes you gave me, sir, I think I've summarized what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mthembu, for those words and for so graciously observing the 10 minutes. It is very much appreciated. We will now go to our final respondent, Professor Mothala. Please welcome her to the podium.
Thanks very much, everybody. It's a great honor to be here, and it's so strange to be here without my dear cousin, Yusuf, who would be gracing the podium, cheering us along, and making us all feel very welcome. So I want to start off by saying that I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak at the memorial lecture of the iconic figure and educationist, Professor Yusuf Karodia. I also want to extend my deep appreciation to Professor Magnet Ntombela, the principal of Mancosa, for this invitation and who has taken on the reins of Mancosa so ably. I want to just acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Julie Goga, Aisha and Mohammed Karodia, my mum, Mrs. Rabia Mothala, and the numerous cousins and friends I see around us today. Thanks to Professor Salim Badat for an excellent inaugural lecture. I'm not going to respond in detail to your speech, to your comments, Salim, but I will respond to the key theme of leadership as it's spoken of with some reflections on education and Prof. Karodia. I think in remembering Yusuf, who we miss and love dearly, we have the responsibility of taking forward his legacy, which I think for all of us, as we know, had its end point of contributing to the greater good by providing access to quality education to all in South Africa, especially the most marginalized. Now, how do we remember Prof. Yusuf Karodia, the charismatic and visionary leader who had an idea and a plan, one of the leaders who provided access and success for so many working class young people? Do we remember him as the caring family person whose interests went well beyond the call of duty, ensuring that everyone, young and old, was attended to with the care and warmth that is inimicable, the playful and engaging cousin who always had a story to tell, bringing many smiles and laughter from our holidays in Tlatikulu, in Dundee, some 50 years ago, or spending holidays with his mum, my father's youngest sister, our beloved youngest aunt, Naliben at May Street, and sharing birthdays with Anis, or the intrepid traveler, traveling far and wide, arriving laden with gifts and adventures, Cuba, India, Hong Kong, China, that we all vicariously lapped up, or the wily and sharp, fearless strategist and risk-taker, whose successes and contributions are those we can only dream of. In some ways, Yusuf is a sum of all of these parts, and I just want to reflect briefly on his career that led him where he was to become one of the most important leaders in higher education. He began his career as a teacher at Orient School, and in any ways was a lifelong learner and educator, engaging with young people as he did at Mancosa, with our nieces and nephews, with the same degree of dedicated attention that he did with the many ministers who graced the Mancosa graduations. For all of us who know him, and particularly for the younger people, and I'm so sure his grandchildren will attest to this, the question always was, what is your plan? What is your purpose for the next while? How are you going to contribute to make the difference? And the next step, well, stop messing around, just go and do it. A strategic leader and thinker at all times. Before the notion of the public good became fashionable, he was doing it seamlessly for family members in need, the students he taught, and through the volunteerism that he engaged in selflessly through his academic years, working with Fatima Mir and Florence Mkhize in the Pambili schools, in the education programs around the townships. I think this is a really important lesson we can learn from Yusuf, that the spirit of volunteerism and giving back remained with him even when he completed his high degrees, his master's, and his doctorate. But soon, when he joined UDW, he soon began to feel the limitations of pure academic life, because as we all know, Yusuf was a doer. He was a person of action, and he would never be satisfied with just being a quiet academic writing papers. As his wife, Julie, my dearest cousin as well, who at all times was at his side and who must share in all the successes and the tributes we present to him, she would always say, Yusuf is restless. He can't sit still. My mum would say similar things. When is he going to stop and when is he going to slow down? But to him, what was the point of scholarship and learning if it had no resonance with actual change and transformation? He saw education as a bridge to our common humanity for building societies of stability and goodwill and opportunities for all. He was not deterred by the pessimism of those who saw no possibilities, even though education in the context of all the challenges of the present. Together with this, he displayed the qualities of tolerance, respect, inclusivity, wanting to always bring everyone in, and a tremendously open spirit, and was always open to critical debate, which our family is known for, the Mirs, the Mutalas, the Karodias. We debate, we talk a lot, we talk loudly, and he was always not interested in mere slogans. At the same time, the world order was changing, and we were all grappling with the local and the global, and Yusuf was ahead of his time. He was well aware of the opportunities that were presenting themselves, together with the problems. Globalization created new opportunities and accessibility to education, but it's also beset with problems as it produced winners and losers, especially for the low-skilled and less educated. Globalization shifted the balance towards capital and higher-income learners, some of the things Salim has spoken about, at the expense of the working classes and unemployed. Those who began to benefit from it, as they do in South Africa, have acquired more power and influence because they prioritize their own individual elite interests above the social good. But as you know, education is a vast field of endeavor. And Yusuf, in his instincts, began to see that there was a need for greater participation for all students, but in particular black students, in the fields related to management of public and private education and institutions. Using his contacts in the global, he set about transforming the local higher education landscape. I think this is a vision that he and his brother Anis shared, one in the private sector and the other in the public sector. They saw the state environment provided by universities as too limiting to engage in innovative practice, and they decided to engage in bold and decisive interventions. I think it must have been these ideas that were the spark for Mancosa and everything associated with it. Although it was done very carefully, it wasn't without some prior experimentation around learning provision for early cohorts. But this was what it was grounded in, and I think the last speaker also spoke to this, that it was grounded in the belief that South Africa must have a focused and well-developed strategy to develop its economy which will be the foundation for development and growth. And for Yusuf, as the last speaker said, the acquisition of knowledge is the key to economic prosperity and for changing lives, society, and providing stable institutions. Mancosa was then Yusuf's laboratory for changing educational practices. He established Mancosa despite the skepticism, including my cousins here, from his immediate family, who simply did not understand his longer-term vision and possibilities. And we all wondered, why would he leave a comfortable academic job, take on so much uncertainty, albeit with a young family, a bond on his house, and most probably a car to pay off. And so all amongst us as well, there was a fair amount of skepticism about the way he was going about things. But Yusuf was a person of intuitive insights, which proved his skeptics wrong. I dare say what he set out to do may not be in the management text about the requirements of venturing into business. Not for him was the precepts of detailed, rigorous planning of every aspect of the project he was about to launch. Not for him was the endless equivocation and debate and the possibilities of failure. He could not be deterred from his instincts which led him, and that's how he lived his life and the projects he did, and therefore had the successes he had. Although his intuitions when he set up Mancosa and then Regent were not immediately visible to us, they were based on deep educational and social proprietary insights, as well as an understanding of management theory and processes. In education, we have different models of leadership. One is transformational leadership, which aims at influencing and building organizations to move towards desired pathways of change. It's tend to focus on creating and building new organizational visions, establishing goals, designing change strategies, and defining new ways of measuring organizational performance. And that's exactly what Mancosa gave us. The second model of leadership, I think, which Yusuf showed us, was a model of leadership called distributed leadership. This requires academic leaders to provide critical management roles, such as the control of resources, finances, and performance management, and strong regulatory instruments. And in every way, Yusuf embodied this to the point at which even the CHE and other national institutions acknowledged his contributions. He was always interested in the issue of ensuring quality and equality in education. He was always consultative, and he always led from the front. Finally, instructional leadership. And I think this is what was at the core, and I think when we speak about the Million Books Project, the things that Dr. Mtembu spoke about, the things that Prof. Badat spoke about, he was very, very dedicated to learning and knowledge. Maybe that came from his own background, from being a teacher, from growing up in deep hardship. But he was always concerned with the question of epistemological access and the central role of knowledge creation in the university. In this regard, his most decisive quality, defining quality, was for never compromising. And we all always argued with him, this is too much. Are you going to be able to do it? But when he wanted a fully accredited doctoral degree, he got it. When he wanted international partnerships, he achieved them. He wanted a school of education, and we wondered how that was going to happen. And he did it. And he was absolutely committed to a state-of-art academic infrastructure for his students, including the beautiful venue in which we are in today. We all felt part of his success because he made each one of us, whether we were literate, educated, not so educated, part of it. I'm almost done. I don't think he set out to build this large, varied, distributed international organization. I don't think that's what he had in mind in the first place. He was interested in providing affordable, alternative, accessibly excellent education to what existed, especially in the context of the deep socio-political challenges that face post-apartheid society. I have had a brief look at the Mancosa stats, and they way surpass what's happening in the country. They have close to 30,000 students. They have some 50 programs. Their job security in terms of where students go to, it seems as though in 6 months, a graduate of Mancosa has a job, which again defies the national stats. And he was working in every way to ensuring that learning was going to be pleasurable, the designs of buildings and lecture halls were fitting, and he had a keen eye for the aesthetic, regardless of costs. I think this is most probably my most important sort of concluding point. I think what Yusuf did was to contribute to a few models in South African higher education, and this is for what he will forever be remembered, contributing to one of the success stories of quality private higher education, changing the socioeconomic features of so many who complete and have meaningful labor market opportunities. Anybody who's been at a Mancosa graduation, and I'm sure Dr. Mthembu will attest to this, we can feel the palpable joy and celebration as we all joined the ceremonies and the groups who were both celebrating and at the same time being celebrated on achieving their degrees. I think the other is something that needs to be written about, and I hope Kiru, who's doing his book, will do this. But when we talk about black-owned entities in South Africa, and there's a lot of talk about this, about whether racial capitalism still exists, whether we have actually moved over to a larger scenario around black-owned entities, Mancosa must be a case study of success that has to be written about and celebrated. What Yusuf's management model has contributed to, whether it's through transformed leadership, distributed leadership, is to use using management jargon, is a stuff that the best business schools, whether Harvard, Stanford, UCT, should be proud and teach about, and I hope that certainly happens. Obviously, while we were all celebrating the success of Mancosa, a stream of international suitors were lining up to join Mancosa, leading to leading Mancosa joining Honoris, and then being listed on the London Stock Exchange. Mohammed will know the many, many, many months of hard work that went into it, and this was the dizzy heights that were achieved. And I'm convinced that if Yusuf was still with us, there would be more in store. Finally, within the broader family, including this Mancosa family, and we knew a lot about the Mancosa family, who was in trouble, who needed to get married, who he was fixing up with whom, and then our broader family. He attended to each of our needs equally, whether we're sick or well, whether better off or less well, counseling the younger and the older to see whether they had a future plan. His central role in our family is absolutely irreplaceable. I don't see another person in our midst who does that. He was the glue that kept it all together. His home was our meeting place. We all spent many nights in Shannon Drive, and we all took great comfort in his presence and in Julie's presence. In many ways, he reminded me so much of my dad, Dr. Chota Motala, his beloved uncle. They both had a quick and decisive manner. Both were committed to family and community. They both had a great zest and passion for life. They were both very articulate and charming. They both had very loud voices, and they both had a commitment to the greater good. We've all been devastated by the loss of Yusuf and Prof. Karodia's sudden departure during COVID times from our lives, and we were all so eagerly awaiting to share the next chapter in his life, particularly those of us who accompanied him on the memorable trip to Mauritius. He's left an enormous legacy, some told, some untold, and it is incumbent on each of us to build what he's left us in our work, our commitment to improving the lives of others, and in the values that he has espoused. May our bonds continue, and may we nurture the important legacy of our beloved Yusuf and Prof. Karodia. Thanks very much.
Thank you very, very much, Prof. Motala, for that academic and heartfelt talk and response. We have gone quite significantly over time, as tradition dictates at Mancosa, but we can squeeze in just 2 questions because really, I mean, that is sort of the most critical part of the event. But I will now open to the floor if there are any questions or comments that anybody wants to share. I know a lot has already been said. Okay, well, if not, then I will not keep us here unnecessarily, and I will welcome Mohammed Karodia to take the stage and take the podium to share a few words. To our panelists, we will discuss over dinner. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you all. I would like to begin by acknowledging today's speakers, Professor Badat, Professor Mutala, Dr. Bani Mthembu, the leadership, management, and staff of Mancoza, the Karodia and Jadwood families, the Mutala family, colleagues, and friends. It is truly an honor to stand before you today to express our heartfelt appreciation to Mancoza for hosting the Professor Yusuf Karodia Leadership Legacy Lecture. This event marks a significant moment in recognizing the profound impact of my father and the instrumental role he played in establishing two formidable private higher education institutions, Mancoza and Regent Business School. It is fitting that we reflect upon the leadership legacy of Prof. Karodia as we reflect on the status of the world we live in today. We live in a world confronted by multifaceted challenges wherein the imperative for visionary, authentic, and bold leadership has never been more critical. The complexities of our global landscape demand leaders who possess the foresight to navigate uncertainty, authenticity to connect with diverse populations, and the boldness to enact transformative change. Prioritizing the value of humanity is not merely an ethical stance, but a pragmatic necessity for sustainable progress. Authentic leaders, driven by empathy and a deep understanding of human needs, can bridge divides and foster inclusive solutions. Visionary leaders propel societies towards innovative and long-term goals, while bold leaders dare to challenge the status quo and champion human-centric policies. It is this interconnected world where the well-being of individuals and communities transcends borders. The call for leaders with the courage to prioritize and uplift the value of humanity is both urgent and universal. Prof. Karodia's legacy is not just a narrative of academic achievement. It is a story of empowerment and a story that has touched the lives of thousands of students and families across the African continent. Through the creation of Mancoza, Regent Business School, and Honoris United Universities, he has opened the doors to education, providing access and opportunity that have in turn transformed the trajectory of countless lives. The impact of Prof. Karodia's vision extends beyond academic achievement. It has shaped the very culture of these organizations. His visionary leadership has cultivated an environment of inclusivity, innovation, and excellence. His unwavering determination to uphold the principles of quality, opportunity, and belief in the potential of human beings has become the guiding light for all those associated with these institutions. The Yusuf Karodia legacy is a testament to a lifetime commitment to making a tangible impact on people through a direct investment in them. His unique leadership style, marked by a deep responsibility to see the best in people, has set a standard for us all. Prof. Karodia's resolute dedication to transforming lives, both locally and globally, challenges us to reflect upon our own roles in a world that is becoming increasingly divided. It is in a time where global inequalities are widening, where geopolitical concerns loom large, and where our planet itself is under strain, Prof. Karodia's legacy serves as a beacon. It calls on leaders in business and society to embrace authentic, selfless leadership that advances the interests of people and country alike. We must also take a moment to recognize Prof. Karodia's friendly yet firm demeanor, his confidence in times of adversity, and his unwavering drive for progress. These qualities, coupled with his commitment to a better society, inspire us all to strive for excellence and positive change. As we express our gratitude to Mancoza for hosting this distinguished event, I extend sincere thanks to all attendees, Mancosa staff, our esteemed guests, speakers, and the Karodia family for gracing this occasion with dignity and pride. A special acknowledgement to my mum, Zuleika Karodia, who has been at the side of my father and supported him through all the trials and tribulations of business. I would also like to acknowledge Anissa, Aisha, Zain, and the staff of the Yusuf Karodia Foundation for their unwavering support in advancing the Yusuf Karodia legacy via the Yusuf Karodia Foundation. Together, let us carry forward the torch of Professor Yusuf Karodia and his legacy, ensuring that his vision continues to guide us towards a more equitable, progressive, and compassionate world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. It has been an honor to celebrate Prof. Karodia's legacy this evening. I now call upon Professor Kiveshni Naidu to give the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Please welcome her.
I'm sure that you are waiting for me to get over this because I'm the one that's preventing you from having dinner, but I promise I'm not going to be too long. Good evening to our special guests present here this evening, amongst whom are the members of the Karodia family, Professor Salim Badat, Professor Shireen Mutala, Dr. Bani Mtemu, members of the Mutala family, the Mancosa Executive Committee, Mancosa management staff and students, and supporters and well-wishers. As part of the closing remarks, please allow me to just continue to reflect on our founder's legacy. As I sat here and listened to all of the profound messages, there was just a flood of thoughts that came into my mind. And it started off with humble beginnings, adversities, and to an entrepreneur, a visionary, a philanthropist, an educationist, and a compassionate individual. Prof. Karodia's values and initiatives influenced our institution's culture, our academic programs, and community engagement. These notable achievements, challenges that we were expected to overcome, and the ongoing projects which he inspired by his vision provided a comprehensive view of the lasting impact of higher education and the community at large. Prof was a giant of a man who touched the lives of many. His philosophy of giving was really admirable. He stood true to the 3 A's on which Mancosa was built, and he made us realize his vision and that education is a right for every human being. His spirit of being an entrepreneur has taught us to take risks, make mistakes, be positive, and never give up. There are many theories of leadership, but Prof led with his heart. But don't be fooled. He would often challenge us, and as he expressed his dissatisfaction in the hope that we would learn from our mistakes and grow into confident and charismatic men and women. Our graduation ceremonies was the highlight of Prof. Karodia, and he took the opportunity to also ensure that our students became meaningful citizens in society. Extracted from the graduation speech, these were the messages that he shared. I am not as eloquent as Prof, but I'm going to try. I quote, "Be humble. You are not smarter than anyone else. Be an entrepreneur. Constantly seek new opportunities. We must move away from the notion that we must work for someone else. Be fearless in all that you do. Dare to dream and believe that the world is your oyster. Always respect those around you. Strive for quality in whatever you do. Make mistakes, but learn from them. Remember the importance of punctuality, respect, caring for the less fortunate and for the aged. Never forget where you've always come from and always show gratitude." A quote that Prof always reminded of and resonates with myself: to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield, from Alfred Lord Tennyson. Let us remember our dear Prof, with the gentle smile, always welcoming us, stopping to make conversation, and being that caring father to the Mancosa team and all those that he has come in contact with, be it young and old. As we continue with the remembrance and celebration of Prof. Karodia's legacy, our challenge is, how do we carry his legacy forward? Striving for academic excellence, upholding the values and ethical principles. It is events such as these that should serve as a platform to reiterate our ongoing commitment to our mission and our values. It also provides an opportunity for the academic community to come together in solidarity and celebrate our founders' enduring impact. Moving on to the vote of thanks. No function is complete without acknowledging those who have contributed to making this function a resounding success. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Karodia family for always supporting us. I would say that I could send an invitation a day before, and I would always get a positive response, and for that we say thank you. To our special guests for accepting our invitation and for sharing their special moments of Prof. Karodia and speaking the truth to power. Thank you for the dialogues that we have had this evening. To the Motala family for always being supportive, to the team that have been instrumental in helping and bringing this function to fruition, a very big thank you. There are too many names to mention. Please also accept my humble apologies if I may have left out anyone. It was not intentional. Witnessing and being part of a legacy lecture, we are hoping that this would have sparked in you to take on the opportunities to be part of this legacy. As we conclude this Founders Legacy Lecture, let us reflect on the enduring impact of Prof. Karodia. Though no longer with us, his indomitable spirit lives on in the foundation he laid. May we draw strength from his memory, preserving and advancing the principles that he has laid, which we hold dear to us. In honoring Prof. Yusuf Karodia, we pledge to carry forward his legacy with grace, resilience, and profound commitment to the ideals that defined his remarkable journey. Thank you for joining us in this celebration of the life of our founder, and we hope that it continues to inspire all of you. It is no secret that when visitors come to Mancosa, they do not leave empty-handed. In keeping with the tradition, I'd like to call upon our special guest, Prof. Badat, to accept a token of appreciation. This is from the Executive of Mancosa and on behalf of the Karodia family. Prof. Badat. Dr. Barney Mtembu, a very good friend of Prof. Karodia. I know you'd share a cup of tea with him, some lunch, and sometimes I would get invited, so I do know. Thank you very much for being a very good friend to Prof. We really say thank you very much. Please do not forget Mancosa. Visit us. Okay, sorry. Prof. Shireen Motala, Prof. Karodia was so proud of your achievements. And he'd always say to us, contact Prof. Shireen. She will be glad to assist you. We did just that, and we're really, really thankful. And we look forward to your ongoing support for the next 25 years. Thank you. I also think it would be remiss if I do not acknowledge two individuals that have always been supportive, have never ever discouraged us from getting involved in any projects that Mancosa would like to embark on. And I'd like to call upon Aisha Jadwat. She has been my partner in terms of the Infinity Green project. She's always been there. Aisha, we want to say thank you, a little token of appreciation for you. Lastly, I'd like to say thank you to Mohammed Karodia. Any idea that we put forward, Mohammed is always the person that's encouraging us. He always says to us, let's give it a shot, let's try. What's the most we could lose? And I think that Mohammed has definitely walked in the footsteps of Prof. Karodia. And I want to say thank you very much, and we appreciate everything, Mohammed. Thank you. Please come, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been a lovely audience.
Thank you very, very much, Prof. Naidu. And I would just like to, as a final part of the proceedings, invite Mrs. Aisha Jadwat to the stage for the presentation of flowers to Mrs. Karodia and Mrs. Mortala. I think an applause would be in order. Thank you, Aisha. And thank you all for your attendance this evening for a wonderful event celebrating the leadership and legacy of Professor Yusuf Karodia. The proceedings have now concluded, and please join us for a meal to allow for some networking and friendly discussion as we break bread together. Thank you all very, very much, and yes, please do join for supper.